What's going on, everybody? This is The Watchers. We have a Horror Watchers episode tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're talking horror movies with a filmmaker from, I think, the same state that I live in. So it's going to be a lot of fun to chat with him after the intro. And that is probably our most subdued and certainly the least aggressive audio for an intro that we've had so far. But we are going to talk with filmmaker Mike Lombardo, and
Hello.
I'm going to kick it over to him and let him give a little more in-depth introduction to you all.
Hi, my name is Mike Lombardo. I'm a Pisces, 37 years old. I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, home of the Amish. I'm a writer, director, and special effects artist. My company is Real Splatter Productions. That's real with two E's, like a reel of film, because we shoot on digital, so that makes perfect sense somehow. My first film, I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday, was a post-apocalyptic Christmas movie that came out through Scream Team releasing in 2017. Which is quite a number of years ago, but that ended up playing all over the world and winning a bunch of awards. And now I'm back making another movie finally called Dead Format, and that's what I'm here to talk about, I guess.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we'll get into Dead Format, but we'll chat about a lot of stuff. We can, I think most stories tend to begin best at the beginning. So, obviously, you're sitting in front of a giant stack of physical media, and you were showing me that that's only like a third of your collection.
Yes.
What drew you to this genre? You said you were 37, so you're a little bit older than us, but not much.
Barely.
Yeah.
Barely.
What kind of sucked you into horror?
So I've been a terminal horror fan my entire life. When I was, there's pictures of me in nursery school dressed as Beetlejuice for Halloween and just every day. But yeah, I've always been into the stuff. I was obsessed with horror movies growing up. I was a video store kid, big Monster Vision kid too. I used to stay up every Friday, Saturday night and try to watch as many of those movies as I could before my mom would storm into the living room and yank me off to bed. I was, actually I can show you. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, one of the greatest books ever written. Huge fan of that as a kid. I carried my copy around so much that it actually fell apart on me. So yeah, I've been into horror all my life. It's funny because all the people in my life were like, you're going to grow out of this one day. And here we are at 37. And I'm like, I don't think that it's changing anytime soon. And, I used to make films on my VHS camcorder that I got as a kid. Write short stories. Actually, one of the things that we just did recently for the Indiegogo campaign was as a little thank you to the backers. We posted my first short film I ever made. It was on a VHS camcorder called The Video Dead. I made when I was 13 for a high school class that I was taking on video production. And then I did a reading of a short story I wrote in the 4th grade about the blob coming out of the TV and murdering my family, just to give you an idea of the type of child that I was. My mom always liked to say during Q&As and interviews, she'd go up on stage and say, I always thought that Michael was either going to be an artist or a serial killer. I didn't know which. And I was like, thanks, Mom. That's really nice of you.
Well, have we figured that one out yet?
Yeah, there's still time.
Yeah. I mean, nothing that anyone can prove. I mean, I definitely have made movies. I can say that legally without any problems. But anything further than that would be a very different podcast. Just don't dig in the backyard.
FBI in the chat.
We do have crime watchers, so if you haven't decided,
don't make us feature you twice
on a podcast.
not the return appearance I'd like.
But all right, yeah, awesome. That's a very relatable childhood. For me, the first like horror movie that I can really remember like loving as a child was Nightmare on Elm Street 4 Dream Warriors.
Very nice.
I had that VHS and I ran through it so many times that not, dissimilar to your book, it actually started to fall apart because I watched it so many times. I had, while still in a crib, a Freddy Krueger poster next to the crib, and now I'm going by what my parents told me when I was growing up because I obviously can't remember that far back. But I did have the Freddy Krueger yo-yo. That's like a collector's item now. It was blue, and the centerpiece had Fred on it, and he was like red and pink. That is a collector's piece now, and I do not have it any longer. But that's like the first toy that I can remember playing with.
I still have my I was obsessed with Tales from the Crypt as a kid too, and I still have my talking Crypt Keeper doll where he's in the tuxedo, and he says, hello boils and ghouls when you press the button. I still have my original. I now have one that's still in the box. I scored off of eBay a few years ago, sitting in my living room. So very relatable. And my copy of Peter Jackson's Dead Alive on VHS, I wore through that. I had to buy a second one because I watched it so many times. I used to force all the neighborhood kids to watch it.
Yeah, we've been talking about Dead Alive a lot the last week or so. We brought it up. JC loved it growing up.
That was my first introduction, man. Like when I don't even remember how old I was. I was just flipping. I told this story last night, so now I feel like Drew repeating stories. But I just was flipping through channels one night. IFC had it on, and I was like, "Oh, this looks interesting." And there's like the lawnmower.
Oh yeah.
Scene, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." And then from there, I started like watching the Italian, the zombie movies, and then found Dawn of the Dead. We grew up in the Monroeville, Pittsburgh area, so we were surrounded by all that. George Romero.
Undead, man. That's the best.
Yeah, that's a thing that it would be very common for us. I have a friend. His name is Ray, and he and I, when we were in high school, we used to jump in the car, drive to Monroeville on weekends, and we'd hit up Suncoast and some other places where we'd buy movies and stuff. But the Monroeville Mall in particular, we'd be like super lame about it because it was basically our identity for all of high school, where we would go and like retrace,
hang out for no reason,
retrace steps, and that small section of the mall that was like actually still the same. We'd go there and like stand there and be like, wow, man, this is where it all started, bro. And
I'm confused. You said there was a problem with this.
No, not a problem at all.
I remember you saying the word lame, and I don't understand. I only got to go to the Monroeville Mall. I've been there 3 times now, but I got there the first time right after they did the remodel, so I didn't get to see the fountain or anything. But a buddy of mine, Matt Blasey, he's in Land of the Dead and Survival of the Dead, but he does like tours and shit of it all the time. Like he gave me a guided tour through the mall, and I was like, even though it didn't look the same, I was like, it was like walking on hollowed ground. Like you could just feel it. I was like, wow, this is, because Dawn of the Dead, that movie, watching that, I rented that movie. I blind rented it. It changed my life. Like I was like 10, and I just kept rewinding the head explosion over and over again. That's when I became obsessed with Tom Savini, and like being in that mall, it was just like, it's still even as an adult, it's still like I put on the music, and then I walk around. I was there when they put the bus stop and stuff. It's just of Romero. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah, that's a big part of our identity and where we grew up, and it would be, just a casual weekend for me to either go to Monroeville or hop over to Evans City, so it's a huge inspiration, and Tom Savini in particular. I remember meeting him for the first time. It was well over 20 years ago at this point, and it was one of those things where you meet somebody and I don't know about you, but we talked about this literally on a stream last night with Shirley Doe, the pro wrestler. And like when you meet these people, you almost feel like you're a bother to them. So the conversations are always like super quick, and then you like walk away from it and you're like, man, I can't believe I met that dude. But it could have, like, the interaction could have been so much more deep. Like John Russo, for instance, if he had my phone number and called me. Like I was on that kind of term with John Russo.
That's cool.
But I can say that while also saying that I still regret not having a better conversation with Tom Savini, or even just saying like, oh man, I'm a huge fan, because I think he'd be receptive to that. But I just felt like, I'm some asshole kid. He doesn't want bothered right now, even though he's at a convention where there's just 1,000 of us. But Savini,
Well,
yeah.
I will say, when I met Tom Savini about 20 years ago, I did say I was a big fan. I was an asshole kid he did not want to talk to, apparently, because I had a really bad experience, which broke me, because I don't get starstruck very often, but I walked up to him and I didn't know what to do. Man, it was my idol. Like, growing up, he's the reason I wanted to be a special effects artist. And I walked up and I literally was trying to formulate words and I couldn't speak. And he just looked at me. He's like, so am I signing your shit or what? And I just, because I had heard all the stories that he was an asshole and stuff, and I didn't want to believe it. And my friends that were with me, they were all giving me shit beforehand. They're like, oh, what are you going to go sniff him or something? And like, after that happened, I walked away and they're just like, dude, I'm really sorry. Like, they knew, like, right off the bat. But then I've met him since and he was fine. But sometimes you catch people on a bad day. But it's funny because I do a lot of conventions, and especially film festivals. And I've had people come up to me and they're like stuttering and they're nervous. They're like, it's really intimidating to meet you. And I'm just like looking behind me. I'm like, to meet who? And they're like, you. And I was like, are you high? Like, what the hell? Why would you be nervous to meet me? And it's just funny because, you don't realize that people's perception, like when someone's a fan of something you do, they put you on a pedestal. I mean, I do it all the time, and it's weird. They're just normal people,
Yeah.
And like, some of the best conversations I've had was about non-horror stuff. Like, I talked to Malcolm McDowell about like Roman history for an hour at a convention, and he was like super cool. And then as soon as someone brought up Clockwork Orange, he just shut down again.
Yeah, I mean, you're the only person who probably ever talked to him about that. Everybody wants to hear about this fucking movie that he did 50 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
I,
So
I
it's
absolutely relate to that. My don't meet your idol moment, since we're on that subject. I was at a convention. It was a while ago, about 20 years. So every single person that I've told this to tells me like it had to be just a bad day. But I met Kane Hodder, and this is one of those situations where it's like meet and greet. You're paying for autograph. You're paying for that time, and he didn't acknowledge me once. He was talking to somebody else that was at the booth the whole time. I know he has like that the germophobia or whatever. Like, he always signs with gloves, and so like that didn't bother me so much. But like, he kind of just like took the 8x10, signed it, handed it to me, and shooed me away. And that left like a lasting impression on me with Kane Hodder in particular, where it's like, man, it's hard to enjoy Hatchet because this guy was such a prick to me. And everyone tells me like, oh no, dude, Kane Hodder's the best. It just must have been a bad day.
He's a nice guy. I've met him I met him when I was a kid, and he's really good with kids. And then he's always at Scares the Care. He's always he's part of the team for them because he helps raise money for the burn victims, the children's ward. So I've met him a lot of times. And one time I was at Scares the Care, and it was after hours at the show. I was in the bar talking to a bunch of people, and my friend Susan was there, like talking to him because he was in the bar. And he walks up to me. He's like, "You really do hold court, don't you?" And I was like, huh? And he like points to all the people and he's like, look at this fucking guy. He's talking to more people than me. And then he like slapped me on the back hard enough that I like fell into the bar. And I was like, I think that's a compliment, but I don't know, because he kind of seemed like a dick. And everyone's like, dude, Kane Hodder just said that to you. I was like, I guess that's a good thing. I don't know. It was a weird interaction, but he's always been cool otherwise. I think he's probably just a bad day.
Yeah, that's what everybody says, but I don't think I would ever risk having another bad interaction with him based off of that one interaction. Like, I don't know if it's giving him the benefit of the doubt or whatever. It's such a weird grudge to hold too. Like, this dude at a convention was not receptive to me 20 years ago. So like, I have to root for Ken Krissinger as Jason instead. Like, yeah, fuck him. He
If it
didn't
makes
make
you feel
Freddy
any
versus
better,
Jason.
if it makes you feel any better, when I met Doug Bradley as a kid, because Hellraiser is like my all-time favorite thing ever. So I was really excited. I was like 11 or 12, and I had he was at a local haunted attraction called Jason's Woods, and he was their guest. So I went up there and I had my pinhead mask and I had a big stack of VHS tapes, and I was like losing my shit. So I'm in line, and the people in front of me are like, they didn't even know who he was. They're like, dude, you look like you've been waiting for this your whole life. Why don't you get in front of us? So I go up, and he's super nice, super cool, talking to me, and we're chatting, and he's asking, he's like, how old are you? Your parents shouldn't have let you watch this movie, and blah, blah, blah. So great experience. And then my stuff's all sitting on the table next to him, and I'm trying to pick it all up so I can put it back in the car. And the guy behind me comes up, and he went out and bought a Jason's Woods Frisbee. And I'll never forget this. He goes and he hands it to Doug Bradley. He's like, yeah, can you sign this? And Doug Bradley's like, yeah, what's your name? He's like, yeah, don't put my name on it. And Doug Bradley's like, okay. And he's like, yeah, so you were in that Freddy movie or whatever? And Doug Bradley looks at it, signs his name, and he's like, yeah, that's what I was doing. And he threw it into the cornfield. I was like, wow. I was like, damn, man, you pissed him off.
But kind of deserved, though.
No, I mean, absolutely. I wouldn't have done that personally, but I'm also not fucking Doug Bradley. Like, he can get away with it.
Yeah. So, yeah, man. But, yeah, I'm sorry that your Tom Savini experience sucked, especially since he was such a huge inspiration. So, is he... Fine. So, his work, is that you said that, that kind of inspired you to do FX yourself. And so did you go to school for that, or did you just kind of learn on your own?
No, I almost went to his school. I had a couple friends that had gone that were older than me, and they told me not to bother because they're like, well, he shows up once a semester to hit on the chicks and do blow. So, but they said the instructors were really good, but they're like, at the point that you're at, he's like, just keep practicing and you can learn all the stuff that you're going to learn there anyway. So I kind of wish I did go because I would be a lot further. I mean, not that I was trying to do effects as a career. It's just something I love doing, but I would have gained some really valuable skill sets that I am still, teaching myself if I would have gone, but it also would have cost me a lot of money. So, but I'm self-taught. Honestly, the big thing that I've been doing the last like 7 or 8 years is Stan Winston has Stan Winston School of Character Arts. They basically have an online school now where you can see behind me, half of the shelf back here is Stan Winston DVDs, and their tutorials, they're like 5 or 6 hours long, and they range from like gelatin facial prosthetics to blood pumps to animatronic T-Rex heads in your garage. Like, they basically have all the Stan Winston guys, giving a lesson, and it's basically like standing in the room with them for 6 hours and watching them like in real time do this stuff from scratch. It's incredible. It's also incredibly expensive. They're like $60 or $70 a lesson, but I mean, I have learned such a tremendous amount from those. And then also just reading books like Tom Savini's Grand Illusions 1 and 2. I mean, my bookshelf over here, there's an entire shelf of effects books. I mean, I'm constantly researching, watching behind the scenes and stuff, and learning how to do shit. Like, it's such a wonderful world to be a part of. So I learned all sorts of stuff like that. So I'm not professionally trained, no, but to wrap up, I wish I would have been, I guess.
Yeah, that's our bag too. I say like we, like collectively, but me and my group of friends, we started, just kind of pissing around making movies in high school, and we used a mini DV camera. And the first thing that we shot is a short film. It went like 43 minutes. It was called Of Dice and Men. Playing off of Mice and Men was literally just to have a catchy title, and the plot has nothing to do with anything. But we made that for the price of a $6 watermelon. And the main gag in the film was somebody in a skull mask was going to have their head smashed with a pickaxe. And then inside of this mask, we stuffed the watermelon. And then so we had like the one shot of this watermelon going through. And the mini DV was autofocusing. So while we're in the middle of this, one a single shot that we have, it gets blurry while we're smashing the head. So that was something that we like had to. That it still bothers me to this day, all these years later, and just the DIY aspect of it. I don't know if it's punk roots or whatever, but I feel like it in everything that I do. I I kind of respect it a little more, and I don't. I grew up a super huge fan of like Lloyd Kaufman and Trauma,
I was gonna say
and
Trauma, Watermelon, Head Smashing. I mean, that was my film school as well.
yeah, and I spent an absorbent amount of money when Make Your Own Damn Movie came out, and for anyone that is kind of into like that self-taught film school stuff, that's a DVD set that has a book as well, and I spent a weekend. I just watched through every bit of that, and that was my film school when I was in high school, like, trying to film. That's actually how John Russo ended up with my phone number, because he had a film academy that I was on my way to go into, but young, dumb, and stupid, and not following through with anything because I didn't know anything about what I wanted to do with my life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't follow through, but it's one of these things that every so often I revisit, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to really feature this as a show is because I absolutely love the genre. What I've seen of your stuff really tickles me, and it kind of hits me in that same way that Trauma does. So, being on that kind of other side of Pennsylvania, have you ever done any interaction with those guys and on that side in Jersey?
With Trauma, I met Lloyd Kaufman once, again, one of my heroes when I was growing up, and he spent the entire time I was gushing about how big of an influence he was, staring at at the time, my girlfriend, her tits. I was like, well, this is about what I would expect from meeting the guy that runs Trauma. But I loved old Trauma. My views on Trauma have changed a lot over the years. I'm not a big fan of their stuff. Like post Citizen Toxie, I think they kind of took a dive, even for them, which is saying something. But I love his books. Make Your Own Damn Movie. All I learned about filmmaking. All I knew about filmmaking, I learned from the Toxic Avenger. Like invaluable resources for an indie filmmaker. Like just absolutely incredible. So I went from wanting to work on a Trauma movie, that was like my dream, to as an adult and a filmmaker now, I have some issues with how they run things and stories I've heard about how they treat their filmmakers and stuff. So, but their foundational values and knowledge were super big inspirations to me growing up. So, I will always love them for that. And I still love all the old movies. But I don't have any desire to like sell a movie to them or anything. I will just support from buying their Blu-rays and DVDs and all that stuff. And I still have a ton of it, and then in Dead Format, we're going to feature a lot of their VHS tapes and stuff because obviously, like, I grew up with all that shit. Redneck Zombies, Cannibal the Musical, Toxic Avenger, Kabuki Man, all that stuff.
Yeah, and reading those books, he's very honest about how kind of shitty he is, and he even says hey, like if you want to work on a Trauma movie, you're not going to make anything, but you'll get to be in a Trauma movie, and we'll give you a cheese sandwich and you can crash on set, and that's the most guerrilla filmmaking, and at its core, I think guerrilla filmmaking at its finest. That's everything that I could hope for and expect when I shoot. But another thing that he talked about, and it's one thing that I've always been curious, so to have a conversation with somebody like you, I'm going to broach it with you. So he talked about in those books financing, and the way he would do it is just being fearless. And he said that the best advice he could give is dentists. Like, you just call dentists and ask dentists to invest in your movie. So I'm curious how this dude from Lancaster, PA, out with the Amish, starts financing these movies.
Well, the dentist thing doesn't work anymore. The dentist thing used to be because they were always looking for investment opportunities for tax shelters and that kind of stuff, but I don't think that's really a thing anymore, unfortunately. So the way that we would finance stuff, we being Real Splatter, which I guess is me, is it was all out of pocket. When we made I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday, we spent $10,000 to make that movie, which for anyone out there listening, do not try to make a feature film for $10,000. That is a remarkably poor life decision. It's so incredibly stressful, like more stressful than it ever needed to be, and took 4 years to shoot a movie like that. But that was I worked as the manager of a pizza shop. So I just, every time I got paid, I'm like, all right, guys, we can film for 2 more days and let me go get some props. And I'd be working on the effects after work every day and getting the shit ready. Dead format, we're obviously going with the Indiegogo, which is the first time I've ever tried to crowdfund, because I don't like asking people for money, which, I mean, it's true. You need to be fearless and shameless, but I've always been able to finance things by, like, we put out a DVD of our old short films called Suburban Holocaust. And so I sold copies of that. And then that was enough to get, the ball rolling on the next project. And then I wrote a book and I would sell that. And like that all goes into the budget. All of the royalties from I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday over the last 7 years, I've been hoarding those. So that is all going into the budget of Dead format. So like all said and done, at the moment, we haven't shot a single frame of the movie yet. And I've already put almost $3,000 of my own money into the movie, just getting the video store props and everything. I've been planning this movie for 5 or 6 years. So, I mean, I think that's really the key to making like a guerrilla, like indie film is, one, knowing where to look for stuff. Like basically like that old adage, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Like that is so true. Like I hit thrift stores, flea markets. If I see something on the side of the road, or, at the very least, like when I'm in a pinch, I will, and you'll see this because you're on my Facebook now, I'll literally just ask Facebook or whatever social media. I'm like, hey guys, I need a pitchfork, or I need an Amish buggy, which is what I was just looking for. And it's a shot in the dark, but you know what? Sometimes someone's got it. And they're like, hey, cool, I want to be a part of this. And then you go, I'm like, all right, I'll give you a credit, hang out on set. I'll give you, better than a cheese sandwich, I'll give you a slice of pizza. But, the amount of opportunities and things that we've been able to get for free or for cheap just because I wasn't afraid to ask is tremendous. And, the more you do it, the more people you network, you build up, your audience and fans and stuff. And people have come out of the woodwork to help us with things. So I guess to answer your question, most of it comes out of pocket. The other half just comes out of the fans. And I guess crowdfunding, the way that I psychologically dealt with the idea of basically asking people for money, was a lot of people want to help support the film anyway. This is just a different way of doing that. I'm not forcing anybody to do it. If they want to see the movie get made and they want to help, then they'll donate money. If they don't, and they say, fuck off, Mike, it's like, fair enough. That's fine. And that's kind of how it's been. But fortunately, more people have been supportive than not. So we're in, that's where we're at now.
Yeah. And another thing is, like, with the crowdfunding option, that's still relatively recent. I feel like that Indiegogo and GoFundMe and stuff. What was it? Kickstarter was a big one. I mean, that's still like just kind of like a decade old at this point, give or take. Yeah. It's not, as far as mainstream stuff goes, like it's happening a little more often than you see with like the indie side. But you also have things to show for yourself. You have something that you're able to like, hey, here's this film, or here's this book, here's all of this stuff that I've done. I have to imagine that having that portfolio makes it a little bit easier to throw in an Indiegogo for this film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing this stuff for almost, I think actually we celebrated Real Splatter's 20th anniversary last year, I want to say. So, I mean, I've been doing this since forever. And I'm lucky because when I was like 17, I met Brian Keene, who's a big horror author, and he ends up actually being local. Actually, half of the horror writing community lives in central Pennsylvania for some fucking weird reason. But I was very lucky because I met them and I gave them, again, just be fearless. I walked up and I gave him a DVD, a home burn DVD of some of my old short films to him and another author named JF Gonzalez, and then hit them up on MySpace. And they watched it and they're like, this kid's got some talent. And then they kind of became mentors to me over the years, and they really helped me out a lot. And like, honestly, the biggest thing they did was just seeing somebody that I admired so much that was in the horror scene, like basically doing what I always dreamt of doing, them saying, hey, you're doing good here, kid, like keep it up. that boost to my confidence was so huge. Because I mean, I graduated high school. I didn't go to college. I was going to go to film school. I was going to go to makeup school. I split the difference and just became a shit and worked at a pizza shop instead. So it was good to have that backing, and that gave me the confidence I needed to keep doing things and making shorts. So, I mean, I built an audience like person by person. I mean, we used to go out, me and my buddy Julius, we would, he has a website, he does animations and like Lego creations and stuff, Baron Von Brunk. You guys should check him out. He's a real cool dude. But we used to print up flyers because he's my graphic designer. We'd make real splatter flyers. We'd make Baron Von Brunk flyers, and we'd go all around town and just hang them up at college campuses with links to the website. And we would dress up in gas masks and trench coats and hand out flyers. You can't do that now. You get shot or arrested because of how things are. But back, in the early 2000s, it wasn't a problem. But we would just do guerrilla style marketing all the time. And then I met these authors and I'd go to signings and then they would promote me. And I just kind of built this audience. MySpace was huge for us. Like MySpace, we were one of the first MySpace film accounts. I mean, there are people on there that I still talk to this day. And, we built that audience. And then over the years, the projects got bigger and bigger. And then when we did I'm Dreaming of White Doomsday, we won all the awards and everything. And that legitimized us in people's eyes. They're like, oh, you're like actual filmmakers. You're not just kids fucking around in the backyard anymore. And then another thing that really helped me was there were some local filmmakers that were doing a documentary called The Brilliant Terror about independent, like grassroots horror filmmaking. So they reached out to me because they'd seen me in the newspaper and they wanted to do an interview. So I was the last person they interviewed for this project. And so I did this interview and I'm like, wow, I botched that. I'm an idiot. And then they called me again like a week later, like, hey, can we do another interview? And I was thinking, they want to redo this because that was such a bad interview. And they asked me different questions. And I'm like, okay. And then like another week goes by and they call me. They're like, hey, you want to go out to lunch? And I was like, okay. And they're like, are you working on anything right now? Like any projects we can come and film? And I'm like, oh, absolutely. I have so many projects. So I made up a short film like on the spot. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. So started working on stuff. And then they came and filmed me. And then flash forward like 7 years of them filming me on set up and through White Doomsday. I became like the central focus of the documentary. And then that world premiered at Arrow's Fright Fest in London, which was awesome. And then that kind of blew up. So I've been very, very lucky, let's just say. And that helped a lot when we launched the crowdfunder because people knew who I was and they trusted that we would be able to pull this off, which, I can't really ask for more than that. Like that's awesome. So
yeah. Hey, what was the name of that? Is that out?
The Brilliant Terror, it's not. They did not get distribution for it yet. It played on the fest circuit a whole bunch, and I'm hoping that there's some more screenings because everyone wants to see it, but nobody can.
Yeah, I think I saw some.
What's that?
I would say I saw some pictures on IMDb where they had pictures you doing like special effects. And now there's one where you were putting blood on a person on the ground, and
that was in our short film, The Stall, our Lovecraft apocalypse movie that took place in a public bathroom. Not glorious from Shudder. I'll tell you, when that movie came out, my phone exploded. People were like, "Dude, they ripped you off." And then I watched the movie, and I'm like, they took the idea that we had, and they made a good movie out of it, as opposed to what I did. So
yeah,
I was. If they did rip me off, then good on them because Glorious is awesome. So. But that was we filmed in a public bathroom. It was an abandoned warehouse, and it was like 5 degrees. There's actually in the documentary. There's a whole sequence where I'm laying on the ground, spitting blood at our lead actor. And there's a fog machine. We made a ground fogger, so we put ice in it so the fog would lay. It was leaking, and I couldn't afford to buy a new one, so we had no money. So the ice water is leaking. I'm laying in a puddle of cold water on a concrete floor in a bathroom in like sub-zero temperatures in the middle of winter. There's literally a hole in the wall leading to the outside. It's snowing. And I was so cold. The Paul, one of the directors of the movie, of the documentary, he actually stopped filming and he called cut in the middle of my shot. And he's like, you're going to fucking die. I can't stand here and do this anymore. And he forced me to go stand in front of a space heater and he gave me his jacket. He's like, you're going to get hypothermia. Like, what is wrong with you? I was like, I'm fine. We need to get the shot. We need to get the shot.
Yeah, that's relatable to me on more than one molecule. I'll say that.
Wow, very insightful.
In addition to filmmaking and stuff, we used to also backyard wrestle as children, and
as adults,
and as
and
adults.
adults,
We
very
did a
recent adults.
we did a reunion like 8 years ago because
And
one of the guys
we're doing one more.
one of the guys thought he had cancer, so we're like, oh shit, let's get the band back together. But we used to do like what we called buried alive matches in the winter, where when there was snow, we would like the only way to lose would be to be buried in like the sub-zero temperatures with the snow and stuff. And we'd have like 60-minute Ironman matches in the snow just for shits and giggles. And so I fully understand going out there and freezing your ass off because you're trying to get the shot, or whatever you're trying to prove to yourself. It drives you in that scenario. But we're talking about snow, and my absolute favorite genre or subgenre of horror is Christmas horror. I love it. I love it. I
was going to wear my Christmas Evil shirt tonight, but I had to grab Chud instead. My favorite Christmas horror movie.
Yeah, also a great movie. But and yeah, Christmas Evil, it's untouched.
It's the fucking best.
Yeah.
Love it so much.
I'm interested to learn more about this dreaming of a white apocalypse because I love when people deconstruct the Christmas season and throw it into those kind of loops. So tell us about this movie.
Yeah, I thought it was a white power movie. My bad.
So it's funny because when we were trying to sell it, we had a very short-lived attempt with a sales rep. And he, bless his heart, went to Lionsgate for some reason. I'm like, yeah, they're definitely going to pick up this $10,000 movie. But he had a meeting with Lionsgate, and before it even started, they said, you're going to have to change the title. And I was like, why? And I'm like, okay, I guess I can kind of see what people would think. I've only had like 2 people in all the years it's been out that have said, like, I thought this was going to be like like an anti-white movie or something, or like a white supremacist movie. And I'm like, thankfully, only like 2 people have thought that, and then they watched the movie, they're like, oh, okay, never mind. But so I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday was based on a short story I wrote. That's in. So I have a book called "Please Don't Tap on the Glass" and Other Tales of the Melancholy and Grotesque. And the reason it's sideways is because it's like a fish aquarium with mutated fish. And the back of it, you're actually seeing through the glass, which is kind of neat. So I wrote this story, I'm Dreaming of a White Doomsday, because my mom was hospitalized with stage 3 kidney failure and almost died. So she had 3% kidney function. She's fine now. But during that time, she was in the ICU for like on and off for like 6 or 7 months. And I had to kind of keep morale up. My family they weren't all in the same state as me. So I had to be the relay between the doctors and the rest of my family and with her. And I had to basically try to shield everybody from the reality of how bad things were so everyone wouldn't lose their shit. So I found myself in this really weird position where it was like a role reversal, because as a kid, my dad was in a really bad truck accident when I was very young, and he was in a coma, and then he ended up becoming brain damaged and all this stuff. So my mom basically raised me and my 3 brothers by herself and worked like 3 jobs. And I didn't realize how bad things were until I was older. And she told me these stories as an adult, but like, no matter how bad shit got, we always had birthdays and Christmas and stuff. Like, she always made it happen. And, flash forward, I'm like 24, and I realized I'm setting up like a birthday in the hospital room for her and stuff. And I realized that I had done a complete role reversal, and it was now me shielding her from reality, because that's all she did when we were kids, is she didn't let us know how bad shit was. And I think back on that, and I'm like, how could you survive like that amount of stress and pressure and keep a happy face just for the sake of the people you care about? So I wrote this story basically about watching someone you care about fading away and not being able to help them, and just about the powerlessness I felt and the depression. And it's about a mom and her 7-year-old child starving to death in a bomb shelter after the end of the world. And it is, when it world premiered, people thought it was going to be like funny, because Real Splatter, I do horror comedy. Our tagline was putting the laughter back in slaughter. And they're like, oh, Mike's doing a feature. This is going to be hilarious. And I'm like, I promise it's not. So we do our film fest premiere at Nightmares Film Festival, world premiere. No one had seen the movie yet except the immediate crew. We get into the theater, and I'm used to gauging how a screening is going by how many people are laughing and having fun. This movie starts, people are chuckling a little bit, and then it just goes quiet. and it's dead silent the entire movie, and I'm sinking lower and lower in my chair. I'm like, oh my God, like what the fuck? Like I bombed out. And then the credits start rolling. And at a film festival, I don't know if you've ever been to one, but everybody claps at the end of every movie because, you know, the filmmakers are there. It's a big, exciting audience moment. Nobody claps.
It's like when you're on an airplane, everybody lands.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not dead.
We didn't die, but the Boeing guy shot himself.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. So no one claps. And then I hear it. And I was like, oh my God. Then another person starts. And then another person starts. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? Am I about to get the slow clap? And then it stops. The lights start coming up. And I was like, oh my God. So then they call me down to the front to do the Q&A. And my legs are shaking. And I'm like ready to throw up. And I'm like, where's the emergency exit? I'm getting out of here. And I walk down there, and they shove a microphone in my face, and the fest director is like, so you wrote and directed this, right? I said, yeah. And he looks at me and he says, fuck you. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. And then he points, and I turn around, and the whole crowd is crying. Oh. And I was like, oh, my God. And then...
Except for those 3 sickos that were clapping.
Yeah, and like, it was just funny because they didn't know what to do. They're like, I guess I should clap. But people after that, like just strangers coming up and hugging me, they're like, oh my God, this was so beautiful. I understand, like talking about like how loved ones that they lost, and because the whole movie is about grief and loss and depression. It's a really, really, really heavy movie. And it's also a very slow burn. So if that doesn't sound like your jam, you probably won't like it. But that happened at every single film festival we ever screened it at. It's the same thing. Like just people are just wrecked by the end of it. And they come up and it turns into like these group therapy sessions during the Q&As. And I tell the story about my mom, and she actually ended up working on the film, which was really great. But it's a really, really, really personal movie, and I don't know. It's just a weird thing. It's about the magic of childhood and Christmas. Like people think that I love Christmas horror because I love Christmas. Like everyone thinks that I would love Halloween. I mean, I like Halloween, but Christmas is such a magical time of year. I love the decorations. I love the idea that Christmas. Yeah, it's great, man. It's like
Hallmark Christmas movies 24/7.
Yeah, I love Christmas music, all that shit. It's just it's a wonderful time of year. And it's like it just feels like it's like everyone for one moment of the year, most of the world is on the same page. Even if they don't celebrate Christmas or their religious beliefs, whatever, people just it's the idea they want to give to each other. Like it's just a nice time of year. And I have so many fond memories of growing up with Christmas and stuff and my family. So I use Christmas as like a backdrop for the story, but it's really about how the magic of childhood gets slowly eroded by the world. You know, the older you get, the more you realize the world has teeth. And that's kind of what the main theme of the movie was. We were shooting with a 6-year-old, and it's about this mom shielding him from the reality of what's going on. You know, she's like, we're going to celebrate Christmas knowing that they're going to fucking starve to death. Like it's a really, really awful movie. It's very sad. But you know, people like it or they absolutely hate it. It's very polarizing. So generally people either give it like a 1 or a 10, depending on their mindset. So I've gotten a lot of hate mail for it. And I've got a lot of people that said that they watch it every year and it's their favorite Christmas horror movie, which blows my mind because they're crazy if they think that, because there's a billion other Christmas horror movies that are infinitely better, but you know, I'll take it. But it's, it's I don't know. It's just it's a weird movie. It's got all my weird little obsessions, like the apocalypse got gas masks, Santa Claus, like Santa Killers has always been a weird obsession of mine. We have Toxic Crusaders toys in there. There's some nice little references to that, and we were able to get Damien Maffei, who was in Haunt. He plays the devil, and Strangers Pray at Night. He's the man in the mask, and he's doing shit tons of stuff. He's the voice of Johnny in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game. Okay, so cool, he's a buddy of ours. So he was in White Doomsday right before he did The Strangers, actually. So that was really cool. So, but yeah, the thing is, the movie took 4 years to make on weekends. And actually, one of my strongest memories of the production was we were in post-production struggling to get this done in time for the film festival deadlines. And we were almost finished, and I was up for like 36 hours straight with my 2 editors, and we were trying to get the movie done. And we're like, guys, it's almost done. We're all hyped up. And my phone rings. And it was Brian Keane. And he's like, George Romero died. And I remember like that was the day we finished the movie, and it's just like somebody just dumped a bucket of shit on our heads all day. Like nobody wanted to talk. It was just devastating. And I'm like, the day that I'm finishing my first feature film, my absolute hero passes away, and I'm like, man, this sucks. And it just, so it was just a wild time. We, like I said, we got to play all over the world with festivals. I think we won 7 or 8 awards. Scream Team Releasing picked us up. We did like a VHS, a Blu-ray, a DVD. It was streaming this year at Christmas time. Bloody Disgusting featured us as one of the top 10 Christmas horror movies. They did the 12 Days of Creepmas. So every day they picked another theme. And for the sci-fi horror Christmas, we were number 1, which that blew my mind. It's Bloody Disgusting. Like, again, that's like the only thing cooler than that is like getting into like Fangoria and stuff, they don't even exist anymore. So that was like amazing. So I was like, no matter how down I get about myself about the movies, I could go back and I'm like, man, I would do this all completely differently now, But it's like, how many indie movies are people still talking about 7 years later? How many indie movies that cost $10,000 are people still talking about 7 years later? So it's like, we did something right because people still, they still embrace it every year. And that's all you can really ask for, So I'm very proud of it.
Absolutely something to be proud of.
I'm gonna make sure I cue that right up after I watch Christmas with the Cranks.
also a great underrated Christmas classic. I will die on that fucking hill.
So where can we find this film? Where can we watch it?
White Doomsday. So right now it is streaming on Tubi. If you are a physical media guy, we have copies on Blu-ray available on the Indiegogo for dead format, signed copies. If you don't care about the signed copies, on ScreamTeamReleasing.com, they have copies of the Blu-ray and DVD available as well. And I think it might still be available at like Target, Barnes & Nobles, all those places. It was online on those sites a while ago. I don't know anymore. I don't think it's on Amazon anymore. It was on Prime, but it's streaming on Tubi, I think Roku. Screambox has it right now as well. So if you're into streaming, but the physical media, aside from being an incredibly important thing that everybody out there should be supporting, unrelated to me, there is an 1.5 hour long documentary, a making of documentary called Armageddon from the Cheap Seats that we shot. We pretty much filmed day by day making this movie, like me building props in my garage, making our bomb shelter door out of a piece of styrofoam and a PlayStation 1 steering wheel controller. Like all the DIY shit you could ever want to see. If you're interested in the nitty-gritty, like uncensored view of how horrible it is to make an independent film, then you're going to want the Blu-ray, because that documentary is, I think, better than the movie personally, but I'm biased on my views on all of that. But so it's out there.
Everything that you just described, I think you sold me perfectly on it. I like just the melancholy of it all, first and foremost, but every year I do a new rotation of Christmas movies that I have not seen, horror, and I'll splice in action here and there, but it's always like every year I do 25 Days of Christmas Horror, and I've been doing it for years now. That's going to be added to my rotation this year. It's going to be December 1st film.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Everything that you said, man, like it hit me. But we are surprisingly short on time here, and you have a new movie that you are out talking about. So let's talk about Dead Format, man. Tell us about it.
So Dead Format is about a VHS collector. It's set in like the early 2000s, right before video stores start to go out of business. It's about a VHS collector who lost his father, and he's kind of dealing with the aftermath and the grief of that. He moves back into his childhood home, and he's kind of alienating himself from his friends and his family. And he finds out that the video store that he used to go to as a kid, Video Castle, is going out of business. So he jets down there so he can buy up their horror section and finds a movie that he's never heard of before, which is called, I actually have it right here, Next to Die. And there's no description or anything. It's this very weird, mysterious tape. So he buys it, and it ends up not going well for him. Let's just say that. It ends up being a cursed tape, and all sorts of bad stuff happens. And I don't want to give away too much more than that, but it gets very, very violent. We'll say that. And it's also a very heavy, melancholy movie, but it's got some comedy in it. So I feel like it's old real splatter and Doomsday are two polar opposites of the spectrum, and I feel like this one kind of shoots down the middle. So that'll be a lot of fun. It's just like a love letter to the old video stores that I grew up with. Like, we created our own video store, Video Castle, and we did, Men Night of the Living Dead, very Lancaster. We have all these fake movies and stuff. These are actually on the Indiegogo as perks, the screen used VHS boxes. We're doing we did video membership cards that are personalized and stuff, like all sorts of cool shit like that. But it was a short story I wrote, obviously, after my father passed away. And it was kind of inspired by, I had a VHS tape of my grandparents getting their wedding vows renewed, but they did it at the house I grew up in. And after my grandmother passed, my mom wanted this tape digitized so we could play it at the memorial service. So I was, hooked up the VCR to the computer, and I was digitizing it, and just seeing my family and friends as children. Like, I was like 6 or 7 in this video. I saw my dad, my grandparents, like cousins, uncles, all these people that had died, and I hadn't heard their voices in decades. And seeing all this stuff, they were like digital ghosts. It was like a tidal wave that just crushed me. And I was like, wow, if we didn't have this recording, if we didn't rent this VHS camcorder to film this event, I would never have heard these voices again. And that just got me thinking about how important it is to preserve like media. Like right now, we are living in a time where you can whip out your cell phone, and anyone in the future can see exactly what day-to-day life was like in this moment in time. Like, they can literally watch this podcast 50 years from now and see exactly what we were up to at 10:57 p.m. on May 30th. But back in the 90s,
we're going to hit it big.
Yeah, absolutely. We're
50 years from now.
This podcast, we're going to blow the hell up. But it was so important to have these things. And it's like, if that tape disappeared, it's like that shit never happened. And that's how I feel about movies. It's like, there's so many movies that were lost on film because of fires, like London After Midnight. Nosferatu we talk about that in dead format, actually. If somebody wouldn't have pirated a copy of the print, it wouldn't exist anymore. We wouldn't have the movie. So this guy archives, he bootlegs these tapes because there's so many movies that never made it to DVD, to Blu-ray. And that's kind of one of the major themes, is that kind of the only immortality we have is the memory of others, and the way we can preserve that. And it's like kind of what we do as artists, is you're just trying to graffiti your name on the wall of infinity, just kind of saying, I was here, and it's such a weird way to think about physical media, but it's true, like movies it's like time travel. And that was a big thing that inspired this movie, because there's a large section of the movie he's watching home videos of his dad and all this stuff, and that factors into the plot later. But movies are like a portal into another time, and I think that it's really important that we preserve all this stuff. And that's why I love that people are collecting VHS tapes and physical media, because even streaming, it's like, how often do they just take stuff off of there? The licenses expire. And that's not even to get into the whole argument of how badly streaming screws filmmakers and creators. Like, they're dicking us over left and right. But to people, if it's not streaming, it doesn't exist. And that's terrible. There's just giant gaps in art that are just gone forever, because it's like, oh, we premiered this on streaming and then we never did a physical release, whatever. It's gone now. You can never watch it again. And that's awful. And I think about that shit all the time. So all that kind of morphed together into this weird amalgamation of a movie it came from a short story, and then it turned into a movie. But the film version, we expanded the short story a lot. It's like a culmination of everything that I feel as a 37-year-old man. As I'm approaching my twilight years, I have a lot of existential dread and feelings about my own mortality, and just all the people I've lost, and it kind of all culminated into this thing. It's just everything that I want to say about those topics in movie form right now. And and there's also like a slasher guy and stuff in it. So I think people will enjoy it. I hope.
I like to call myself a data hoarder, because I hoard electronic versions of books, music, movies, and I have all kinds of network storage devices that I back everything up on, but then I burn them to DVDs, to CDs. So I have stacks and stacks of I have encyclopedias burnt on this just random stuff, man, because this stuff gets taken off the internet all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know I'm I'm going to be the one guy in the world with this copy of the 1888 King James Bible. I don't know, I'm just picking something here, but you never know, right? Like I might have end up, or like even some of these like dude, there's stuff that like I filmed like just dicking around as a kid and stuff that I wish I had now. And my dad accidentally recorded over it with WCW pay-per-views. Like my fifth birthday is a WCW pay-per-view.
No, but you're right though. Like
that WCW pay-per-view needed preserved.
that needed to be archived as well, and that's it is important. Like, you know, you look at a movie like Necromantic 2. This is a weird side tangent, but that movie, Jord Butkerite said that the government tried to seize that film and they were going to destroy all the copies. So they actually rented an apartment and hid the movie, the original master copy, in there. And the only way that they eventually were able to release the movie is that they proved it was a historical document because it was filmed in Germany before the Berlin Wall taken down. So it's a slice of, like, you can see in the movie what the world was like at that point before the wall came down. And like, that's what it's so fucking important to have that stuff because there's so many things that are just gone, you know, and like newer generations, that's like asking us like, hey, you know what the 30s were like? And it's like, no, I don't, because we don't have any frame of reference. But if people don't collect this stuff and digitally hoard it or physically hoard it, whatever, it's just gone. You know, we are all our own personal museums. And it's really important that we keep that stuff. And I don't think that people take it for granted, but you know, we grew up in an era before the internet. Like I'm glad because I had 1 foot in pre-internet world, 1 foot in post. So I know what it's like to have to like look through a card catalog or look at an encyclopedia to find information. And you know, those research skills are hard baked into my brain. And knowing what life was like before that, so I can truly appreciate the convenience of the internet and all the digital storage we have now. So I just hope that people continue to do that and keep a hold of this stuff, because eventually we all become dead formats. You know, it's as we will. There's not as much sand in the hourglass as you think there's going to be, and that's a scary thought. Not to end this on a dour note, but
that would have been a perfect place to end it, artistically speaking. But I'm going to come back to 2 things that you talked about. First of all, Mennonites of the Living Dead. All right, that needs to be a fucking feature film. Let's get on that after this one.
We're actually doing a whole photo shoot on Saturday for that, because we're designing fake video boxes for all of these fake movies like Leprechaun, like Leprosy Convict, and we're doing White Doomsday 2. So we're doing full photo shoots to do the covers and all the stuff on the back for the video store. So Mennonite of the Living Dead is an inside joke from 12 years ago. And I'm like, we're finally going to do it to some degree. It's about a hard-boiled city cop and an Amish elder that team up during the zombie apocalypse to save the town. And the tagline is, belief divides them, survival unites them. Mennonite of the Living Dead.
Gotta be careful though, because Mennonite and the Amish are not the same.
They aren't, and you know, we're as a Lancaster native, I'm making sure to be very, very socially conscious of the beliefs and the ways of the plane.
You're gonna get canceled.
That's hilarious. Also, the VHS tape prop that you have, it struck me as very similar looking to. Man, I brought it up. Now I just brain farted.
Are you talking about this? Faces of Death?
Faces of Death, yeah.
We Joe Meredith did the cover art for this and the back, which is an hourglass filled with blood. If you guys haven't seen his films, he does shot on VHS stuff like Variant. He has a whole Eon Corp like trilogy. He's an effects artist too. He does awesome creature stuff. But I was looking for an artist that could do like a Faces of Death style cover, because that is the video store to me. Like that is the most hard-baked memory I have in my brain, is seeing those covers and just knowing on an instinctual level, like this is some kind of forbidden something. Like it looks so different than all the other art. And he nailed it, man. I was like, dude, this could literally be Faces of Death 6. Like it looked so close. It was wild.
Right. Yeah, so those are 2 things that I really appreciated while you were describing. But this was probably the fastest hour that we've ever done for me.
Yeah,
that
it's quick.
I'm kind of shocked that it's been an hour at this point. We do like to cut it off. I always like to say, like, if there's more that we could talk about, I'd love to do another episode that people would listen to versus, ducking out at an hour and 10 minutes because they have something else to do.
Sure.
I also got a piss. So
yeah, awesome. So for the people not watching the video, because we have a huge audio only following, can you go ahead and plug your stuff?
Yes, you can find me at realsplatter.com. That's real with 2 E's, like a reel of film. Most importantly, you can find us on Indiegogo, the movie Dead Format. We have about 3 weeks left of our campaign. You can actually get the Next to Die video box and the rental clamshells for Video Castle and the fake video boxes like Men and Night of the Living Dead as perks. You can get Doomsday on there, all sorts of cool stuff. We're 60% funded right now. We need your help. You can find me Twitter, Real Splatter. You can find me on Facebook at Real Splatter, or just hit my personal page. That's where I'm most active, Mike Lombardo. Side note on that, if you Google my name, I will come up. I am not the pedophile YouTube musician Mike Lombardo.
Yeah,
fun story.
We were curious, but
when you Google me, that I get that a lot. I actually just got some hate mail the other week, and I'm like, nope, wrong guy. But have you heard about our film?
As part of this, I always do OSINT, open source intelligence, on everybody that we bring on the show, and you were rough, man.
Yeah,
because like not that you share the same name, but like you kind of look similar.
Yeah, I've got glasses, and so it kills me because I've met people I went to high school with. They're like, yeah, Lombardo, I remember that guy. He does movies. They Google Mike Lombardo YouTube, and then you see YouTube star Mike Lombardo arrested for child porn. I'm like, oh my god, no, different guy.
And you're also the same age.
Yeah, I know. It's really unfortunate, and I'm like, man, I mean, I have other reasons for wanting to punch that asshole in the face, but I especially want to because it's like, man, what the hell, dude? That was when that happened. That was a bad day. I'm like, shit, this is really not going to bode well for me in the future.
Back 2012 was a bad year for you.
It certainly was. But yeah, so I'm all over the place. You can find White Doomsday on Tubi, ScreamTeamReleasing.com. Like I said, our short films, our old stuff is on YouTube. If you're lucky enough to come across it at a thrift store, I say lucky in air quotes, Suburban Holocaust, Real Splatter Volume 1 is a collection of all of our old short films. And then, of course, Please Don't Tap on the Glass, Another Tales of the Melancholy and Grotesque. You can read the short story, White Doomsday, and Dead Format in here, along with 11 other stories that are incredibly personal, sad, disgusting, and sometimes funny. So, and The Brilliant Terror, hopefully coming soon to something somewhere at some point soon.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. This was a lot of fun. And
thanks for having me.
I look forward to seeing Dead Format's completion and subsequent release. We'll go ahead and we'll wish you a fantastic evening. Maybe we'll do this again someday. Anybody listening, check those links out, and we'll go ahead and we'll hit the outro. And everybody have a nice night.
The preceding program has been brought to you by the Watchers Podcast Network. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends to help grow our network. Check us out on all social media platforms, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for your support.